We're up to Mishnah Yud in Perek Gimel in Masechta Bava Kama. We're learning Lilu Nishmas, Levi Yitzchok, and Reb Chaim Tzvi, the Tei Nishmos Yitzrur B'Tzrer HaChaim. May this learning of Mishnah is benefit his soul. Zog the Mishnah, Yesh Chayev Al Maise Shoyrei Upoter Al Maise Atzmei. There is someone who may be liable for the act of his ox, and his doing it himself, he'll be exempt. Basically, logic dictates that if you're responsible for the act of the ox, for sure you should be uh, responsible for the acts that you do. But in this case, there is, the Mishnah says, sometimes you'll have to pay, you'll be liable for the act of the ox, but if you do so, you'll be potter. And you'll see in the Mishnah, there is the principle of komle b'drabe minei, that if the person gets the death penalty for an act that he has done, so we're not going to make him pay for the damages together with the monetary payments. So it turns out that he'll be exempt for his own action, but still, if the ox does it, he'll have to pay. And the other way, it's more also obvious that sometimes potur al maise shore, if his ox did it, he'll be exempt. And there are certain things that, for example, the Mishnah will say, embarrassment. An ox cannot pay, does not pay for shame, shaming the other person. We'll see two reasons in the Bartanura. So, Al Maisa Shoyre, he'll be exempt because the ox is not responsible. But V'chayev Al Maisa Atzmai, but if he did it himself, if he did it, then he'd have to pay. So now the Mishnah articulates which cases would you be exempt if your ox did it, and you would be, if you did it, you'd be chayiv. So we say like this: Shoyrei shebiyesh potter. If an ox shames someone, let's say the ox went and embarrassed the person by goring him in the middle of the street, caused him shame. So a person has a penalty that he has to pay for the shame. But an ox, a shoyre shebiyesh, the ox that shames, is potter. He's exempt. An ox does not pay. An animal does not pay for shame. Why? So the Bartanura shoyre shebiyesh potter diksiv, because the pasuk says ish ba'amisoy, a person by his buddy, but v'loy shoyre ba'amisoy, but not the ox in the amisay. Now, I'm not sure what does it mean. Lo shoir ba'amisoy, meaning another ox. It doesn't say lo shoir ba'odem. Ish ba'amisoy v'lo shoir ba'amisoy. But the ox will not be responsible even. Where's the exact posik of ish ba'amisoy? Is that specifically with regards to the payments of busha, or this is just a pasuk uh, talking about generally? But in any event, we have to look up the Gemara. But the Gemara learns from the pasuk inami, or he has another reason why the ox would be exempt, because eina mevayish chayiv elo kashemevayish bekavona. A person who shames is only responsible if he intentionally shames the other person. He had in mind when he was doing what he was doing to shame the other person. But if he doesn't have in mind, then there is no payments of busha. So therefore, b'shoir lav mekaven lebayishu. An ox cannot have intention, doesn't have the mind to shame intentionally. So therefore, an ox will not pay for busha. Uh, I it's talking about a person because if you talk about another ox, there's no even Bushayach Busha by another ox. But we say Ish Ba'amisa, either it's a Pasik, Ish Ba'amisa, but not a Shoir Ba'amisa, meaning in the other person, uh, in the body of the man. If the ox of the man shames the body of the man, so then he would not have to pay for it. Uh, so you see, this is the case. Shoyde shebiyish potter, but who shebiyish chayiv. But if he goes and shames another person, then you have to pay. There's the payments of busha. And then we have another case where the ox would be responsible, would be exempt, and the person would be chayiv. The halacha is, we learn in the pasuk, if a man, a master, would blind the eye of his slave or knock out his tooth, uh, the Torah says that you have to let that slave go free because of his eye and his tooth. So the din is, what happens if the ox is the one, the ox of the man blinded the eye of the slave, shoyroi, shesima es ein avdei, if the ox blinded the eye of your servant, or vihipilas shinoi, or he knocked out the tooth of the slave, then he is potter, which means the owner does not have to let the slave go. Only if the owner is the one that blinds or knocks out the tooth would he have to let him go. Bartanura, shoyre shesimes ein avdei potter, means potter. Potter means you don't pay it. Potter means you doesn't ve'ein ha'eved yoytze ben chayrin al yodei. The slave would not go out free because of what the ox knocked out the tooth or blinded the eye, which is different. That's the ox doesn't get, but if the person is the one that blinded the eye of his servant, and he knocked out the tooth of his slave, chayav, he would be liable. And liable means that he has to set him free. Es ein avdei chayiv. If he blinds the eye of his servant, then he's chayiv. Shenemar shmois chof aleph lachofshi yishachenu, says that you set him free. So we see that he is more responsible than the ox. So we have two examples. The ox is not liable for the embarrassment, shame payment, and the ox is also not bring the freedom of the slave if he ox knocked out the tooth or the eye of his slave. But the person, if he shames, he'd have to pay. If he blinds the eye of the slaves or knocks out his tooth, he'd have to pay. And now we're going to learn the other case, in which case the person will be exempt and the ox will be responsible. So we say, Shoyroi shechoval be'oviv uvi'imoy. If the person's ox goes and wounds the man's, his master's father or mother, so then chayav, then the master needs to pay the payments for the damages that the father and the mother sustained. If the ox wounded them, the master of the ox must pay his parents, his aviv v'imay, for the damages that his ox has done. Now we're talking about payments for damages. The ox needs to pay. Before we were talking about the shame or talking about freedom of an eved, but here we're talking about paying the regular damages. The ox would have to, the owner of the ox, the son would have to pay for the damages the ox wounded his parents, his father, his mother. However, but But if the son himself will be the one who will wound his father and the mother, he won't have to pay. Potter is exempt. So we see that the ox will be more chayiv than the son. The reason why the son would not have to pay is because he gets the death penalty for wounding his father and the mother, and that's kamle b'drabmene. V'hu shechaval ba'odom if the person wounds his father or his mother, he would be exempt. Minat tashlumim from payment. Why? She'ein adam meisu mishalim. A person does not get the death penalty and pay, since he would be getting the death penalty because one who wounds his father and his mother gets the death penalty. So therefore, he doesn't have to pay. So the ox pays, he doesn't pay. Another such example of Kamle B'Drabimene would be Shoyroi Shehidlik as Hagodish B'Shabbos. If the ox goes and puts somebody else's granary where he stores the grain on Shabbos, he lights it. He's chayiv. He'll have to pay for it. Why? Because the ox, the person will not get uh, the death penalty is not violating Shabbos. An ox that lights a fire on Shabbos, puts on a fire on Shabbos, is not violating the Shabbos and would not, therefore, he would be responsible. The owner would have to pay the payments for the ox who put somebody else's godish, somebody else's granary on fire. He would have to pay for it chayiv. And the Bartanura explains that the liability is only a half a nezek because this is considered like keren. This is unusual because people don't usually, um, oxen don't usually light Kodesh on fire. Anything which is unusual is a tool of keren and only pays a chatzinezek. So the Bartanura clarifies that what the Mishnah says, Shoyre sheidlik sagodesh b'Shabbos, he means chayiv chatzinezek. He would, even though it says chayiv, but it means a half an ezek de mishunu. But nevertheless, the ox is responsible. So we see a case where the ox does the damage, would have to pay, but but the person, if he should light a granary, somebody else's food storage of grain on Shabbos, will be potter. Why? Because for starting a fire on Shabbos, you get miso, you get the death penalty, and the rule is that ein adam, you can't meisu mishalim mipnei shu mischayev benafshei, because he is guilty with his life, and because a person does not uh, uh, do both, does not pay and also lose his life. So in this case, he'll be potter. Actually, we learn in the Gemara and a lot of this whole the discussion that it's not only when you actually will be chayiv misa, even chayovim misa, that means if you did it b'mezid, so it doesn't actually have to be mamash a case of misa. Let's do one more Mishnah, do a little bit. We're not going to do the whole Mishnah, we'll do a little bit of the Mishnah. Mishnah Yudalef. So it says the Mishnah Yudalef. So what happens? Shoir shoyer reidev achar shoir achar. So an ox was chasing another ox. It looks like this ox is chasing him, that he's going to hurt him. But then Vuhuzak, he got damaged, which means we don't know exactly what happened, but we see a damaged ox that somebody was chasing. Logically, we must assume that it was the ox that was chasing him. So now,
So that's
huh?
no. It's good. I had to point out that in the previous Mishnah, the Mishnah went out of order because in the beginning he said
Yes,
that's and and then he explained that second.
in the reverse direction. Yeah. Sometimes we have such a thing that the Gemara says he starts with what he left off. So
Yeah, yeah,
he left off with this way, and then he starts with that. That's a pretty common also in sometimes in the Gemara. Yeah.
yeah.
So in this case, shoir shoir reidav achar shoir. achar v'huzak, and it was done. So the assumption is that he heard him, and they have now a disagreement. Zaymer shoyrecho hizik. So the one who wants to get paid now, he says it was your dad. You see, my ox is hurt. Your ox hurt my ox, and you should pay for it. The Zaymer says, "Lo ikela basela loka." He got hurt. It was a stone over there, and he knocked his foot. He knocked himself, or he tripped over the stone, and that's why baseka basela loka. And Rashi, the Bartanur explains, "Mischache hoya basela." He was scratching the cellar. I mean, he saw him running after him, but all of a sudden he must have changed direction there and he was sort of scratching himself on the rock. And then that's how he got hurt. But the bottom line is you don't have the evidence. We don't have witnesses. So if you want to make the other one pay, you're saying that he hurt you. You have to bring proof. If you don't have proof, he doesn't have to pay you. One more halacha. If you have two oxen chasing one, and they're both belonging to no, they're two separate oxen, and we know now one of the oxen gored him, but we don't know which one. You have two oxen belong to two different people. They're running after an ox of a third person, and then we see that the ox is damaged, and we're not sure which one of the oxen did it, this one or the other one. I mean, in this case, he's not arguing that it was by the rock. He's just saying, each one is saying, maybe it's your ox. This one says your ox is the one that did the damage. And the other one's the other one. Shneihem Peturim, they are both exempt because since we don't know, the Tarvayu Matchile, they can both push away. And we will continue in Mitzvah Shem with the Mishnah next time when we learn Mitzvah Shem tomorrow.
Wow.